Hey there, and welcome back to the TBH Video Journal. So recently I've been posting on Instagram and on TexasBowhunter.com some of the meal prep that I've been doing with some dehydrated food options, and I've had a lot of good feedback on that, and a lot of people have asked me to create a video going over some of the meals that I'm going to have and some of the preparation that I've done. And so I just want to make a real quick video going over that. I won't go too much into the other foods that I'm going to have for breakfast. I'm going to typically be running just kind of oatmeal. I'll have a couple packets of those per day. I'm going to be got some instant coffee that I'll make, either just Magliadoro type coffee that I've used before, or if I want some extra calories, then I've found this cafe mocha. I've got this from Starbucks. This was $5 for a box of 5 of them, so over $1 a packet. And then I've got this Folgers cappuccino mocha chocolate mocha chocolate, that is was 82 cents for 4 of them. So quite a difference in the price there. Can't tell a whole lot of difference in the taste. But I'll have some of those. Snack wise, I will have some honey stinger wafers. I really like these. These are really fantastic. I'll probably have a couple of those in the morning or mid-morning, a couple of those mid-afternoon, possibly with some nut butter and honey attach those, and then for lunches we'll either have dried sausage, salami, summer sausage, that kind of thing, or the sandwiches, the bagels with some bacon, some honey, some peanut butter on those. I've got these honey stinger energy chews, so I'll probably have some of those if I need a quick pick-me-up, along with maybe some just gummy bears, that kind of thing. Trying to keep it fairly simple. I'm trying to get it to right at 2,500 to 3,000 calories per day. Want to be on the upper end of that. Want to keep the total weight of the food between a pound and a half to 2 pounds per day. So I'm figuring probably somewhere around 12 to 15 pounds for the hunt that we're doing. We're not sure yet if we're doing 6 days, 7 days. It'll kind of depend on how things go. So with that, I want to go real quick onto the method that I use for dehydrating. First, I picked up a lot of the ideas for this. I listened to Hunt Backcountry podcast a couple of months ago. They had a chef on there, and I apologize, I can't remember his name, but he talked about, kind of gave some techniques on dehydrating food, the temperature ranges and that kind of thing. And then I also, backpackingchef.com, I spent a lot of time on there kind of looking at different options just to kind of get some ideas for things I might want to dehydrate, meals that I might want to make. And so what I ended up doing is dehydrating the different individual ingredients separately. So I started out with the vegetables and pastas and that kind of thing, everything that ran at 135 degrees. I've got a big Cabela's dehydrator sitting over here, and so I dehydrated those at 135 degrees for various amounts of time, basically until they were completely dry. And then I did the meats separately. Those I did at 145 degrees for however long it took those to dehydrate as well. The main things that I did, I'll go over real quick, is the vegetables I did corn, and then some peas and carrots. I bought those and just the frozen packages that you can get at the store. Now I did find that if you pre-cook those vegetables, especially the corn, but also the peas and carrots, if you go ahead and pre-cook those, they dehydrate better and they rehydrate a lot better as well. Also bought just the frozen pre-chopped up bell peppers and onions, and so dehydrated those. I've got some broccoli that I chopped up. Did some canned mushrooms and then some fresh mushrooms. I really like the fresh mushrooms better. Canned aren't too bad, but I like the fresh. And then, like I say, I did the pastas. I've got some angel hair pasta, some penny pasta, some macaroni noodles, just different pastas that I put together. Again, I pre-cooked those before I dehydrated them. Should help rehydrate them a lot better. Now, the one other thing that I got from Chef Glenn's website over at backpackingchef.com is different barks. And so I've got several different barks here. And basically, it's so I've got like this is a pasta bark. So I basically took some penny pasta and then and cooked it in a marinara sauce, and then blended it up in my food processor blender or whatever, and then laid it out on fruit leather trays and dehydrated that, and it comes up in kind of what he calls a pasta bark. Also have corn bark, which this is nothing more than creamed corn, a couple of cans of creamed corn, laid them out on the on parchment paper, dehydrated those, and then sweet potato bark, kind of a similar thing. I cooked some sweet potatoes, made basically mashed sweet potatoes, and then dehydrated that again on a fruit leather tray or a parchment paper or something like that. And then the meats that I did, again, the main thing I want to point out is this is venison that I dehydrated. Basically took the sirloin tips that I had left whole in the freezer, thawed those out, ground them up fresh, and then browned the meat. Now, one thing that I did is I added, and I got this from both Chef Glenn and the podcast that I listened to on the Hunt Backcountry podcast, is to rehydrate ground meat a lot better is add breadcrumbs to it. And so they suggest adding, I think it's a half a cup of breadcrumbs per pound of meat. I felt like that was a little much, so I cut that by about a third, but it does rehydrate really well. The other things that I did is I've got some different seafood. So this is just a pouch of tuna, actually a couple of different pouches of the tuna in water, and I just shredded those up and dehydrated that. Dehydrates really well, rehydrates well. This is imitation crab, and I got that idea from Chef Glenn. It dehydrates well, rehydrates really well. Just kind of, again, I like the imitation crab as just a snack. I eat it all the time, either on a salad or just by itself. And so I thought that was an interesting idea. I just shredded it up onto a mesh, a piece of mesh, and then dehydrated it and added it to the chowder we'll talk about here in a little bit. I had some pre-cooked shrimp. I added it to the chowder that I had before. I tried to chop it up really small. It's pretty tough, doesn't rehydrate all that well. It's palatable, but doesn't rehydrate as well as some of the other things. Same thing with the imitation lobster, and I don't know if it's just because I cut it up into larger chunks, but it dehydrates fine. A little chewy texture to it when you rehydrate it. I did go ahead and put it into the chowder that I have. It's, again, palatable, a little chewy, but it actually is tastes great. So, and then the other thing that I did is salmon. Is the similar to the tuna. This is just pouch salmon. This is pink salmon. I think the one that I dehydrated was a smoked salmon, and so dehydrated that, shredded up. It dehydrates, rehydrates really well. Also, so once I had all the different ingredients, and I just started kind of playing around with different recipes. Some of them that I got off the Backpacking Chef website. Some of them I've got, just mixing things together. All right, so what I've got here, let's go through kind of each one of them real quick. This is spaghetti, so basically it's the angel hair pasta that I pre-cooked. It's the pasta bark that we talked about earlier, and then I added some venison to it, some Parmesan cheese. I'll just rehydrate that. I bought these Mylar bags. They're the Mylar bags. They're the stand-up bags. They're 4 mil thickness. You want to make sure you have at least 4 millimeter in thickness, or they won't. You can't cook them in the bag, and I want to be able to cook them in the bag. This one is the shepherd's pie, and so what I did is I've got some of the corn, I've got some the peas, carrots, I've got the onions. I think I put a little bit of broccoli in there. Maybe added just a little bit of the heavy cream powder, and then in a separate Ziploc I put some. See if I can find it here. Just the Idahoan potatoes. I've got several pouches of these that I bought that are real cheap, and so I just took some, put it in a separate Ziploc bag. And so what I'll do is rehydrate the meat and the vegetables, that kind of thing. Let those sit for 15 or 20 minutes, and then right at the end I'll add the potatoes, maybe a little extra water, and then I've got a classic kind of shepherd's pie. Also, this is one where the meat, after I browned the ground meat, I added some ketchup and some Worcestershire sauce before I dehydrated it. Just add a little bit of flavor to it. Next one is the seafood chowder that I've talked about. I really like this. So basically what I did is Heather Kelly had a recipe on the Backpacking Chef. Heather Kelly, of course, of Heather's Choice Meals. That is one of their big sellers, is the smoked salmon chowder, or the salmon chowder that she makes. She had actually posted a recipe several years ago on the Backpacking Chef. So I used a little parts of that recipe, and then Chef Glenn had a different chowder recipe that he used the corn bark and the imitation crab. And so I kind of combined that with some of my own ingredients. I used several different of the seafoods that I had. I've got some, looks like some mushrooms in there. I've added some heavy cream powder. that I had bought when I was doing the keto thing. I added some penny pasta in there, just a little bit of that, some salt, some pepper. I think I've got some curry. I've got some tamarind in there, several different seasonings. I've got some dill, dried dill in there, and then similar to the shepherd's pie, I added just a little bit of potatoes. That's just some garlic and herb instant potatoes. Some of the other meals, chili I talked about earlier. I just made a boxed brand chili. You can use any of the prepackaged stuff, Weiler's, whatever the different chili brands are. Cajun Blake and Raging Blaze seasoning have some really good chili. This I just pulled off a store brand off the shelf, made some quick chili. Of course, you can use a homemade recipe if that's what you want to do, and then just let it simmer for quite some time, get the flavors all blended together, and then I dehydrated that again on the fruit leather trays. Had to flip it a couple times to get it dry. I will add some package of Fritos or something like that, maybe some shredded cheese out on the trail, and have a nice meal. Here I have just a chili mac and cheese. This is basically a package, well, it is Kraft macaroni and cheese. This is, you can see the package I put in separately. I've got the macaroni in here, which I pre-cooked. These are actually different shapes that I found cheap. And then I put some of the ground venison in with that, a little bit of seasoning. So heat that up and just have kind of a chili mac and cheese. This one would be Venison Stroganoff. I just used the Hamburger Helper Deluxe Beef Stroganoff packet. I've got the pasta that was in there, and I put it in here. Added the venison to it, some mushrooms, a little bit of heavy cream powder. It calls for milk when making it, so I just used some heavy cream powder that I had. Add water to it, and have a nice venison stroganoff. And then this one is kind of an interesting one. I found some dehydrated instant refried beans. These are just a package that I bought real cheap, and then I added some venison to it, some burrito seasoning mix, just McCormick's burrito seasoning mix, a couple other ingredients in there. And then from my last trip I had some Alpine Air guacamole mix, and so I just went ahead and folded the whole thing up, put it in a pouch before I sealed it. And then what I'll do is I'll just heat that up, mix the guacamole separately, and then roll it all up in a tortilla and have a burrito or two. As far as individual size, that was one of the challenges, trying to figure out how much I needed. Each of these is around 150 to 200 grams. Somewhere in that ballpark. I didn't get specific with it, but I wanted at least 150 grams and about a third of the weight to be the protein, whether it's the ground venison or the seafood. I don't know what the macros break out to or the total calorie count, but I think it'll be good. The other thing I'm going to do is that I want to mention is I'll have a small bottle of olive oil that I'll add to some of these meals more for the palatability of it, but it'll also increase the calorie count on it. I think that's pretty much covers everything with regard to the cooking setup and the food that I'll be running. If you have any ideas for recipes, I've still got a couple of weeks to put stuff together. Leave comments in the comments section below and let me know what you think about these options. Again, I appreciate you joining me for this elk prep series. I'm starting to get really excited for the hunt that we have coming up. And as always, I look forward to seeing you on the next one.